We're going to begin with a guided meditation that is handed down by Swami Vivekananda in Raja Yoga. How many of you have read Raja Yoga? Two. Okay. Raja Yoga is Swami Vivekananda's commentary on the Yoga Sutras. And he has brought in some very beautiful points in the front matter, connecting the Yoga Sutras with other traditions at that time. And we know that Patanjali lived somewhere between the 4th century BCE and the 4th century CE. And at that time, Tantra was flourishing, Tantra principles, yoga, there was a lot of Buddhist influence. And so he brought in various factors, along with the Upanishadic influence, factors of prana and kundalini, etc., that would augment the practice of yoga. And in Vedanta, we use Yoga Vedanta techniques and technology to deepen our spiritual lives. So in Raja Yoga, Vivekananda has given several beautiful meditations, and one of these is a mindful meditation, calming the lake of the mind. Imagine that the mind is not here. In our tradition, the mind is vast. It's the chitta, you see. The mind is not inside the body is inside the mind. The mind is outside, pervading outside as well. This chitta is vast. It's like a cauldron. The mind travels far, and it can also be focused on a very specific point. So this mind is like a lake. It has many ripples, it has a lot of muddy water in it, electrical charges. These are our emotions, our desires, our thoughts, our memories. All of this is agitating the lake of the mind. So it's a beautiful analogy. And this lake of the mind, this consciousness, is a lot like the properties of water, because it is formless, but it takes the shape of the container. So your container is a little different than my container, but still it is vast. It takes on also the qualities of those things that are deposited in it. For example, if you throw a stone into the lake, there will be ripples. If we throw a very deep impression into the lake of the mind, there will be ripples. If we throw a dirty thought into the lake of the mind, it will soil the thought. And so if we throw salt into the lake, there will be a taste. You may not see the salt, but there will be a taste of salt. So this lake of the mind, this is what we're working with. We want to calm it because we want to see the Atman on the lake bottom. We want to see the self reflected. And what's inhibiting us is this reflected consciousness of the mind. You see, consciousness is not an epiphenomenon of the brain. This consciousness of the mind is a very poor reflection of the core, the source of consciousness, the Atman, the self, the center of consciousness, which is in the heart. It's also in the head, but for our sake, it's going to be in the heart, which is the safest place to meditate. So let us begin. And we begin with our spine straight. And those of you who are sitting in chairs, make sure that your feet are firmly planted on the ground. And we sit like Vivekananda. Notice his palms. His right palm is faced upward, his left palm. His right palm resting in the left palm, facing upward. And all of this with the spine straight, so that the spiritual current is not inhibited in any way. The chest slightly forward. So we have a very positive, no slouching of the shoulders. It's put the chest a little bit forward and the spine straight. Okay? So that we are alert. Half lotus, lotus, or just cross-legged, if you wish. All right, and we're going to practice for about 5 minutes this guided meditation that comes to us from Vivekananda. We begin by taking in 3 deep breaths, breathing in purity, and expelling all impurity. Breathing in calmness and expelling all anxiety and agitation. And breathing in our chosen ideal to reside in the heart, and sending out peace to the north, the south, the east, and the west. Picture a lake, the lake of the mind before you. Watch this lake as thoughts rise and break on the surface of the lake of the mind. You are not the thoughts, you are the witness. Watch as your thoughts arise and break, and the ripples subside. Know that you are not the mind. Be the witness. Do not become attached to your thoughts. Allow them to arise, but stand back and be the witness. The sounds you hear, the ticking of the clock, all of these are the thoughts, the sense impressions. Be the witness. Now, with a calm mind, gather the forces of your mind and focus on the witness consciousness, which is the chosen ideal in your heart. Deep within the cave of your heart resides the witness consciousness. Enter, salute, and offer your japa to your beloved. Your beloved is seated on a luminous lotus, graciously smiling, luminous, accepting your worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. This is to give you a taste of a preliminary practice in meditation. We don't begin by forcing the mind to enter the heart. When we enter the laboratory of the mind, the shrine, we sit and we watch the mind first for about 5 minutes. Why? Anybody know why? First of all,
to observe the thoughts.
Yes, but why do we want to observe the thoughts?
So that we can resolve it, what you want to.
First of all, to know anything that we are observing is unreal. Anything that can be perceived is changing. In other words, we have a mind, but we are not the mind. So this practice reminds us and reorients us that we need not be identified with our thoughts. Second of all, by watching the thoughts of the mind, and this is simply a preliminary practice, it was very, very brief, but by watching the thoughts of the mind, we see what's going on in the unconscious mind. And in that way, whatever we can observe, we gain mastery over. Unless you know what's going on in the mind, how can you control it? So you're like a scientist, you're the observer. And so you are observing what's actually fueling your activities throughout the day. What's actually motivating you. A conversation that occurred 30 years ago, an attachment you have at the moment. See, in this way, you are gaining control over, you're gaining knowledge of the mind, and you are then, where there is knowledge, there is control. Mastery. And then lastly, by withdrawing and being the witness, you're practicing something that's very crucial in spiritual life. Learning to step back. And where are we stepping back to? We are stepping back to the self represented by the chosen ideal in the heart. We are learning to perceive through the eyes of our beloved. It takes practice, but we are doing that a little bit every day when we sit for meditation. This is called pratyahara, watching the leg of the mind, withdrawing, mindful meditation in a Yoga Vedanta sense. Okay? Now, today, we're going deeper into the subject of the mantra, because that is what is drawing us towards this magnet in the heart. And I don't wish to suggest that you need to take away with you or try to take away with you everything that is in this discussion. But even if you can take away one thing and practice that, that's very beneficial. See? So what is the benefit of the mantra we've talked about? What happens to us when we use it? What are some of the spiritual states? We've discussed that yesterday. And today we're going to talk about how to bring concentration into our practice. We want to become focused, because with a focused mind, we develop success in every avenue of life, including spiritual life. Swami Brahmananda says that initiation with a mantra helps our concentration. Otherwise, the mind fluctuates. This day we are drawn to meditate on Kali, tomorrow on Shiva, the next day on Krishna. There's no focus. Therefore, we're not going deeper into our topic. Any research scientist knows, any writer knows, that you begin where you left off and you go deeper into the subject. You begin with that knowledge with which you are familiar, and then you enter deeper, step by step, from the familiar to the unfamiliar, from the known to the unknown. And if we jump from one chosen ideal to another, we don't gain any depth in our practice. The mind remains fickle. So to bring focus and a systematic progression toward the goal, there are 4 distinct methods of spiritual practice. There's worship, which we had yesterday, the Saraswati worship. And many of you perform worship in your own homes. Even if it's a simple offering of a flower, that is worship. In fact, when Swami Brahmananda would do puja, he would meditate, and then he would offer a flower. It's as simple as that. Whatever we give in service and devotion is worship. And then worship with prayer and japa. And we discussed that japa is repetition of the name of the Lord. And then higher than this is meditation. And then higher than this is meditation on the unity of the Atman and Brahman. You have to begin where we are. So we begin with worship, and we begin with japa, and meditation, using japa and meditation together. Swami Brahmananda says, through worship, devotion to the performance of japam grows. The finer the mind becomes, the greater is its capacity for the higher forms of worship. Through japa, the mind inclines toward meditation. Thus, the aspirant gradually and naturally moves towards his ideal. We have to begin where we are. We're all in kindergarten. I don't think there's any great rishi amongst us. So we begin where we are. We move from the familiar then to the unfamiliar. It's a very, very subtle thing that we are working with, the mind, in spiritual life. And this process prepares us for death. Now that may sound like a very negative thing, but one day we are all going to die. See, when we were young, we never thought that would happen. But we see death around us, and the great miracle is that though we see death around us, we never think that we too will die, but one day we will. And are we prepared? And in preparing ourselves, we live life more fully. We enjoy more. With a mind that is aware, that is developed, and that becomes more selfless. See, the whole process. We are enjoying life in a different way, more fully. And at the same time, we have provided insurance for ourselves, for the most important part of ourselves, our spiritual life, our spiritual being. That is the most precious and most personal thing about ourselves. That determines how we relate to the world. And that is why it is against our tradition to proselytize in any way, because your spiritual life is the most personal, the most precious thing about you. So this is preparing us for our liberation. And glimpses of spirituality along the way. Sri Ramakrishna says, the way to remember God in the hour of death is to practice now. The repetition of His name and the chanting of His glories. If one keeps up this practice, then in the hour of death, one will repeat the name of God. Now, this is the science of the mantra. It's so beautiful. It makes such perfect sense. We have so many thoughts going on in our mind. And as you perfect this practice of watching the lake of the mind, you will find that some days the mind is much more erratic than others. Sometimes it's more depressed than others. Sometimes it's happier. Sometimes it's calmer. But there are many, many factors going on in the mind, and the more subtle we become in our practice, the more we see how the mind is a monkey, stung by a bee and drunk. And so, what does the mantra do? It's one thought. We are trying to inject one pure thought into the mind. And as we practice the mantra, it gains in momentum. And as we use the mantra, it gains in momentum and it becomes broad like the river Ganges. And so all thoughts that we have are pulled into this one thought, dissolved into this one thought, moving towards the final hour. And that at that final hour, that one thought that we have harvested comes up and liberates us at the final moment. Because at the final moment, the final thought we have determines if we are to reincarnate or if we are to be liberated. And I have seen in my life, it's a great privilege to be at the bedside of one who is departing. I have seen people who have come into spiritual life very late, but with great intensity, with only maybe a year or two of their life left. And at the moment of death, the name of God is on their lips, and tears of bliss flowing from the eyes. So it does work. And whatever little baby steps we take, the Lord comes in full measure. So we're not dealing with cause and effect here. We're dealing with something that goes beyond this relative world. The grace of God. So this mantra is something that is so accessible and so tangible as watching the breath in the Buddhist mindfulness practice. We don't always know when we're meditating. And as you probably discovered in trying to watch the lake of the mind, it was very vague. It's called the vagaries of the mind. The mind is very vague. It hasn't been channeled in this field. We're babies. And so we don't always know we're meditating, but we know when we're doing japa. That we can be sure of. So it's like a support. It's like a hook, a staff that we can always take with us. And no matter what physical or mental distractions arise in the mind, we can always return, in our tradition, to the mantra. It's as easy as breathing. And eventually it becomes the background consciousness for all of our thoughts and actions. It becomes the default mode of our hard drive, which is the mind. Swami Ashokananda said, Swami Ashokananda was a disciple of Vivekananda. He was one of the heads of the San Francisco Center. He said, repeat the name of God every moment you have free. Fill every space of your day with the name of God. Repetition is absolutely necessary before a truth can be deeply impressed upon the mind. So we're retraining the mind. And we're doing it in the easiest way possible. And that's not to say we don't use other practices, but this is a wonderful practice that becomes a default methodology. One of the great advantages of japa is that it mitigates our karmas. We come into this life with certain karmas from past lives, and we are making karmas all the time. But what the holy name does is it mitigates. Sarada Devi said, by repeating the name of God, you can lessen karma's intensity. If you are destined to have a wound as wide as a plowshare, you will get a pinprick instead. The effect of karma can be counteracted to a great extent by japa and austerities. So it's working its way, it's changing us. It's changing the body and the mind. And how does this happen? Because japa brings to our mind holy association. It automatically brings to our mind our chosen ideal. And the qualities of the Lord, along with the form of God. For example, along with Sri Ramakrishna's form comes a whole host of qualities we automatically associate with him. Same with Mother. With Mother, compassion, sweetness, calmness, grace. Swami Brahmananda says, the mantra is charged with spiritual power. The truth of this will be directly revealed to you as you practice. So results do come. You will feel happier, you will feel calmer, you will feel the support. No matter where you are, you can always perform japa. Swami Bhuteshananda, one of the great swamis of our order, he was Swami Sardananda's disciple, he was the president of the order. He told his Japanese students, this was way back in 1979, he said at the time of initiation, and that is when the Guru accepts the disciple, a seed is planted in the heart of the disciple, of the devotee. And through sadhana, that means through the practice of the mantra, the repetition of the name, that seed is fertilized and watered. And it grows into a sapling. And from a sapling, it grows into a tree, the tree of Brahman, the majestic tree of Brahman. So we gain not only the personal aspect of the mantra, but also the impersonal aspect of the mantra. Now the meaning of the mantra is there is no difference between the mantra and the chosen ideal. They are one and the same. Swami Brahmananda said, what is the meaning of the mantra? It is the name of God. You have a name. If I call you, your form also comes to my mind. Call on the Lord in the same way, repeat the mantra, and at the same time meditate on the image of the chosen ideal. So japa and meditation go together. Usually teachers, when they give initiation, they give a formal meditation. And when the meditation is, the beginning part of the meditation is over, then japa is added to the meditation, but the focus is on the chosen ideal, with the addition of the japa, the mantra. Swami Shraddhananda was a mantra siddha. He explained, the aspirant visualizes the form of the Ishta shining in the light of consciousness, while simultaneously directing the mantra toward the Ishta. So the Ishta, the chosen ideal, is shining in the light of consciousness. It's important to remember that this chosen ideal is consciousness itself. It's luminous, luminosity itself. These twin mental activities are then gradually merged into one. So we're directing the mantra toward the form of this luminous form of God. And gradually they become merged into one. So the sound of the mantra then becomes one with the form of the Ishta. Now, unless we practice, this is just something that is superficial. It takes root when we begin to practice. It's sort of like learning cooking. Your mother turns you loose in the kitchen, and you're not really sure what you're doing, but you learn by doing. You learn by doing. No person explaining and re-explaining is going to help you. You have to practice yourself. Experiment with yourself. And that's the beauty of Vedanta. Do not accept these words, take them, use them, and experiment for yourself. Both, and again this is Swami Shraddhananda, both are external, eternal consciousness, both the mantra and the chosen ideal. Paramatman, the Supreme Soul. The experience of hearing the mantra and seeing the Ishta is unified in consciousness. They are both chock full of consciousness. The state of mind in which these two different experiences become one is called pragya, or pure comprehension. And what brings them together? Love. Yearning. Unless we have that desire for God, our meditation is going to be very vague and haphazard. My teacher used to say, meditate as though death is standing at your back. We don't know what's going to happen to us tomorrow. So if we can bring that sense of urgency into our meditation, when we go into the shrine, prepare ourselves to sit and try to focus with intensity. Then the meditation, we get more out of our meditation. We learn more. We learn by doing. We learn by doing. And then you come to the teacher with questions, and your questions have depth. Because your teacher knows you have been practicing. You see? In the Upanishads, how did these beautiful Upanishads come forth? They came forth by the right question being asked. Without the right question, the Upanishads would not have come forth. What is that by which everything can be known? See? The student was qualified, and so we have to practice so that our spiritual life becomes mature enough that we can ask our teacher the right question to deepen our practice. That is spiritual life. That is spiritual life. So what is the literal meaning of the mantra? It's very interesting. Swami Sardhananda said, "May God, who is the creator, sustainer, and destroyer of the creation, remove my sorrow." This is the significance of all mantras. But it is, of course, much more than that. It's supreme love. It's Ananda. It's the knowledge of pure existence, of who I am. And it's pure consciousness. Satchit Ananda. So how do we maximize our practice? We try to invoke a reverential attitude. You see? It's sort of like an arranged marriage. You see? It's not a love match at first. And so we have to learn to love our beloved. And how do we do that? How do we do that? How do we learn to love?
Invoke love. Invoke love.
Invoke love, and we do that by serving. See? By serving. It makes a deep impression.
That's a really good analogy, actually.
We serve our spouse.
Right.
We do special things. On Valentine's Day, we bring her or him flowers. We cook them breakfast. We do something special to show our love, but at the same time, by doing that act of love, our love increases. There is something, you cannot love something that is not there.
Yeah.
So it's an active process. And by serving our beloved in that way, our love grows. And we think of our beloved. And the more we think of our beloved, the more our love grows. What is our beloved doing? What can I do for my beloved? Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Swami Triyananda is speaking, that before starting to chant the name of the Lord, one should salute the name. Salute the beads. Salute the name. Just by that gesture alone, you're showing your love and your reverence. One should take refuge in the name of the Lord. The name and the named, that is the Lord, are one. See? Just by holding our beads to our head, that our reverence grows. Yeah. When you take the dust of the feet of your Guru, your devotion grows. One time we had a Japanese nun who joined, and she was a quarter Japanese, but she was more Japanese than she was Western. And she had a very hard time with the idea of bowing down to photographs. And she told Swami Prabhavananda that, and he said, feel that you are bowing down to the presence of Brahman. Let that be the object of your devotion. You are bowing down. What is it when we take the dust of the feet and we salute? You are not taking the dust of the feet of a person. You are taking the dust of the feet of the Atman that dwells within that person. And they in turn are saluting you and raising that salutation to the Supreme Reality. It's a beautiful, beautiful gesture. Both are regarding with reverence the other. You're taking, you're saluting the Atman. You're remembering the Atman and that form that reminds you of that. And in turn, the recipient takes that salutation to the Supreme Reality and bows to you, the Atman within you. So we try to maximize our practice by showing reverence for what it is we have received. It is a great gift. And then we try to concentrate our mind. We don't just go haphazardly into the shrine. We try to remind our mind before we sit that really we want to be thinking of the Lord. Sometimes we come with a problem, and we take that problem and we offer it at the feet of the Lord. By hook or by crook, we try to think of the Lord and use that time to think of the Lord. Sarada Devi says, repeating the name of God once with a controlled mind is equivalent to 1,000,000 repetitions with the mind away from God. So think of that. If we can just bring the mind into focus for 1 minute. Swami Sarvadevananda used to say, put aside a half an hour to do japa and meditation. 25 minutes have gone by and we realize we haven't thought of God once. We're doing japa automatically. And so that last 5 minutes, we pull the mind, because there's only 5 minutes left, we pull the mind and with force, we say, mind, you stay here, I want to think of the Lord. You see? So by hook or by crook, we try to bring the mind back to God. And so we use also japa freely and abundantly. Swami Shivananda says, there is no set rule for japa. You can do it at all times and under all conditions, while walking, while eating, while lying down, sleeping, or dreaming. So we can explore these methods later. How to deepen our practice. Sri Ramakrishna said, God is not only inside us, He is both inside us and outside us. There's a beautiful guided meditation. Wherever I place my hand, you are there, my beloved. Wherever I place my feet, you are also there, my beloved. So trying to bring the inward to the outward, so that we are always tasting the divine. We're never separate. We can always assimilate. Wherever we are, we can always assimilate. Our beloved is always there. In the worship, you noticed there were times when I was going like this. That is, using the bija mantras of the object of devotion to sanctify the hands, and then also parts of the body. Remember when Sri Ramakrishna talked about the love eyes, the love body. So in worship, we are sanctifying different parts of the body to turn it into the love eyes and the love body, so that we can feel the presence of the Lord who is embodied in us, and see through his eyes or her eyes. Try to feel that Sri Ramakrishna is within and seeing through my eyes. It's an actual experience, but the seed of perfection is in the practice. Meister Eckhart was a great non-dualist in the Catholic tradition. And he said, from the standpoint of realization, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. Another way of bringing that practice to fruition is by taking the mantra and showering the mantra on various parts of our body. Through the eyes, through the mouth, through the hands, through the feet. Trying to make this a love body. God cannot be seen with these physical eyes, Sri Ramakrishna says. In the course of spiritual discipline, one gets a love body, endowed with love eyes, love ears, and so on. One sees God with those love eyes. One hears the voice of God with those love ears. With this love body, the soul communes with God. And so the mantra, we direct the mantra to various parts of our body to transform it, just as we do in the worship itself. It's part of our worship. Invoke the presence in the body, various parts of the body. So the first stage of this practice is a purifying action. So all actions become an occasion to chant the name of the Lord. That's the first stage. If I'm eating, my mantra is going on, and I'm biting into the food, and I'm injecting the mantra into the food, and the food in turn is purifying the body. Eating becomes a sacred act. Once one of our senior nuns was washing the windows in our Santa Barbara convent, and the windows in the living room look up to the mountains. It's a beautiful expanse. If you ever have an opportunity, you should try to visit the convent there. It's beautiful. The temple is beautiful. It's a prize-winning temple. It's on 50 acres. And her guru, Swami Pravrajika, came up from behind her and said, "Are you doing japa?" See? So by doing japa, This washing the windows becomes an act of worship. We purify our action. And when we connect all our activities to the mantra, they become sanctified. How simple, how beautiful. Very simple. Spiritual life is very simple. Sarada Devi says the mantra purifies the body. So how can we do this knowingly? As we already talked about. Now the second stage is to try to yoke the mantra to the breath. You find that as you do japa, it becomes, you find yourself that with the in-breath, half of the mantra is coming, and with the out-breath, the other half. It's becoming automatic. You see, this Vipassana practice is very popular, but we have an added attraction to Vipassana because we have the mantra. It's sanctifying. This breath. It's natural, in-breath, the name of the Lord, the out-breath, the name of the Lord. Father Thomas Keating was once with a devotee, and he was a founder of the centering prayer movement. And this one devotee was very proud, and he said, I breathe in the centering prayer, and I breathe out all sin. And Father Thomas said, no. You breathe in the prayer, and you breathe out love. So, by breathing in the mantra and breathing out the mantra, we are breathing in the presence of God and breathing out the presence of God. See? And that way we give service to ourselves and the people around us. And this prana becomes our mantra repetition. One of our devotees in Santa Barbara, she used to swim an hour every day. She said, Brahmaprana, you know, when I swim, the mantra comes automatically. Because there's the rhythmic strokes and the rhythmic breathing, and you find that the mantra comes. Swami Vijnananda says, you can take the name of God even as you breathe in and breathe out. As you take a breath, you should mentally say Ra. And as you breathe out, you should add Ma to complete the name of Rama. Thus all through the day, the japa of Rama's name can go on. The third stage is, Sarada Devi describes, through japa, the power of the sense organs is subdued. And how? How is that? We can direct the mantra to the sense organs, as we described earlier, to the eyes, to the tongue, to the ears, to the nostrils, to the skin. Remember when the jute mill, at the Dakshineshwar, the sound of the jute mill, and Sri Ramakrishna said, this is the sound of Om. Directing the mantra to the sounds that are disturbing, so that the sound is no longer disturbing. The mind has connected it with the divine. Sound Brahman. We can saturate our sense organs with a mantra vibration. Forcefully direct the mantra. See, these are all creative ways we can use the mantra. The fourth stage is to direct the mantra to our limbs, our organs of action, while we perform karma yoga. As we're cooking, direct the mantra to our hands, so that their hands are purified as we cook. And as we direct the mantra in this way, as we use the mantra, the body becomes beautiful. it takes on another quality. There was my teacher had a beautiful attendant, Swami Krishnananda. He was very old by the time I met him, and he was a Western monk. He was a Harvard graduate. And feature for feature, he was very ugly. But there was such a radiance in his face. Usually the only word he spoke was Haribol. You said, Swami, how's the weather? Haribol. Is the Dow Jones average up or down today? Haribol. Have you done this or that? Haribol. And he was such a bhakta, a guru bhakta. They had never seen such guru bhakti in India. He knew what his guru wanted before the desire even arose in his guru's mind. He was his chauffeur, he was his attendant, he was completely dedicated. But the mantra was his constant recollectedness. Sahaja Yoga, the easiest path, the most natural path. He was a man of few words. Swami Shraddhananda says, the spiritual aspirant gradually begins to feel a spiritual vibration in the movement of the organs. You begin to feel lighter. See, this is the mantra, the way the mantra works. The 18th century saint Ram Prasad said, "O my mind, you can worship Mother Kali in any way you please, as long as you repeat the mantra given by the Guru day and night." Ram Prasad declares with great delight that the Divine Mother is present in every activity. When you lie down, know that you are making obeisance to her. Meditate on Mother, whether you are asleep. When you walk around the town, think that you are circumambulating the Divine Mother. All sounds you hear are her mantras. When you eat, think that you are offering oblation to her. See? This is called spiritual imagination. When we use our imagination, it makes a deeper impress in the mind. Just as when we combine our aspiration with an action in karma yoga, it goes deeper into our system. That's why karma yoga is so important for us. It makes a deeper impress on the mind. The fifth stage is that we direct the mantra to our thoughts. Thoughts are lower consciousness, and the mantra is higher consciousness. They're all consciousness. So if a negative thought arises, splash that thought with the paintbrush of the mantra. You see? Dissolve it in the mantra. Spiritual jujitsu. Take the higher consciousness and paint away the lower consciousness. That was Swami Shraddhananda. He was a master of the mantra. Swami Ashokananda said, "Japa covers the surface of your mind. Worldly thoughts arising there become suffocated. It is like sowing oats to kill weeds." See? Swami Brahmananda, practice japa unceasingly. Practice it with every breath. Practice it until it becomes your second nature. Then you will find yourself chanting the name of God as you fall asleep and again as you awake. Now we come to the sixth stage. Purifying the sense objects. The sky, the garden, the roadways, our workplace that we enter, the grocery store. Swami Shraddhananda, when you look at the sky and connect it with the divine through the inner repetition of the mantra, the material space will change its appearance. Mark these words. When you look at the sky and connect it with the divine through the inner repetition of the mantra, the material space will change its appearance. The goal of the mantra, namely divine consciousness, will be peeping through the sky. The sky will appear to be a shawl on the cosmic body of God. In a similar manner, the moon, sun, and stars above, the trees, flowers, streams, forests, hills, deserts, and living beings on earth or in water, all of these endless segments of the universe can be purified by the mantra and be experienced as parts of the cosmic body of Satchidananda, existence, knowledge, bliss absolute. How did Swami Shraddhananda show this practice? There's a little meditation walk in his ashram, and I would walk with him, and there would come a fork in the path, and there would be a large willow tree. And he would look up at the tree and he would say, "Mother, shake your locks." And invariably a wind would come up and the willow would dance. And in that way, he combined and he blessed that meditation trail with his mantra japa. At another time, we were walking and we came to a little patch of a flower garden. And he plucked a flower and turned and waved it to the sky, worshipping cosmic consciousness. And so with our mantra, we can splash the sky, we can splash the trees, the flowers with our mantra, and it will liven the consciousness that is there already. All this is verily Brahman. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. We find this in other traditions of the prayer of the heart. In the Jesus prayer, an anonymous monk wrote, "The name of Jesus is an instrument, a method of transfiguration. Uttered by us, it helps us to transfigure nature. The material universe whispers secretly the name of Jesus. This material universe whispers secretly the name of Rama, the name of Krishna, the name of the Divine Mother, whoever our chosen ideal is. That divine consciousness. We can also transfigure the animal world. We will invoke over each of the animals the name of Jesus, restoring to them their pristine dignity, which so often we have forgotten." You see? And the animals feel that. If we have any pets, Swami Asheshananda, he wouldn't allow any residents to have pets. But one day a cat who had feline leukemia took refuge. And then Swami took that cat in and he nursed it back to health with Ganges water and Mahaprasad from the Puri temple. And later I was blessed to be at the center when the cat passed away. And the Swami brought the body of the cat in and knelt before this large picture of the Divine Mother, Sarda Devi, for about 10 or 15 minutes, with a cat held in his arms. And we held a full-fledged funeral service for that cat. And later I said, "Maharaj, what is it like, you know, after the kitty has died?" He said, "I gave that cat a mantra." And he said, through that cat's association, and that cat went wherever he went, that cat was allowed into the hall. And why was it allowed into the hall? The Swami said, "Don't you understand? When I lecture, there are tanmatras that are created. And the cat feels the tanmatras, the spiritual vibrations. And so also, our animals, creatures that we come in contact with, feel the spiritual vibration of the mantra that is going on within you. And he said through that process, that cat was right on the verge of human consciousness. The next incarnation. You see? Swami Sarvagatananda also said, through domestication, and especially with spiritual aspirants, those animals become blessed through their association with you as devotees. They feel the mantra, they're blessed with the mantra. They even sometimes meditate with us.